Alright, so before we begin this episode, I'd like to announce that I'm creating a Discord, and anyone that's unhinged enough to watch these videos is free to join. It's intended to be a place to hang out and discuss esoterics, AI, cryptocurrency, or whatever there's a channel for. Please behave yourself and help create an environment that feels safe and welcoming. Specific rules are in the rules channel if you are interested in joining. I'm unsure how active I'll be, but it is something I wanted to create and see what happens. If you're interested in joining, just message me personally, reach out via Reddit, Twitter, YouTube comment, email, and I'll send you a personal invite link to the Discord. Okay, moving on with the SbSB. We begin this episode in the ambitious pursuit of creating an accessible definition of God or Creator, as so frequently mentioned by respectable sources communicating the Law of One. We're also going to finish covering the intro so that we can actually move into Ra's direct communication with Earth. I hope that these past few videos have provided a stronger foundation for understanding the message, as the goal of this series is to make the Law of One and the Ra contact more accessible to the average individual. Before moving forward, I'd like to add that there will be a Google Doc linked down in the description below, which will provide a TLDR, too long didn't read, of key points made in each video. Feel free to check it out. Interdimensional aliens? A galactic confederation? An evil space empire? Magic? All of this sounds a little too absurd to be true, and if you've believed everything I've talked about in the last few episodes, either you have a stellar intuition, or you're very gullible. Not to worry, it's not my intention to mislead anybody, and this episode should further clarify the legitimacy of these concepts relative to 2022 consensus reality. We'll begin by looking at what some consider to be the most relevant piece of Hermetic philosophy in public circulation, the Kybalion. I have a big revelation concerning the raw material and Hermes, Thoth, Mercury, Enoch, Idris, Nabu, and Akhenaton, I think that's how you pronounce it, which we'll be covering in a later episode. The main takeaway here is that time is a flat circle, the resonance behind the information I'm about to outline from the Kybalion, and the Ra aliens' message of the Law of One lines up for a reason so perfect, I want to work on that video instead of this one, but we'll get there eventually. So allow me to attempt to concisely squeeze the schizophrenia out of the room and lay down some definitions. So, the Kybalion, very popular book nowadays, widely considered one of the better intros to esoterics because of its simplicity. The book introduces a series of concepts known as the 7 Hermetic Principles, and I'm sure that if you're the type to be watching this video, you've probably seen this image or some variation of it before. I'm pretty sure I've used it at least once in my previous videos. Anyways, a proper understanding of all 7 of these principles is very important towards being able to decipher the message of the Ra aliens. In particular, we are going to be focusing on the first principle outlined in the Kybalion, the Hermetic principle of mentalism, an embodiment of the fact that all is mind. That which is infinite cannot be many, for manyness is a finite concept. To have infinity, you must identify or define that infinity as unity, otherwise the term does not have any referent or meaning. In an infinite creator, there is only unity. Basically, nothing can exist outside of the all, the one infinite creator, intelligent infinity. If any force were to attempt to become something other than the all, to differentiate itself from it, then as a matter of natural law, would simply coalesce back into the all, because as Ra stated, that which is infinite cannot be many, for manyness is a finite concept. This is very important, because even mentioning the word God in any serious context is enough to ruin a Thanksgiving dinner. So starting from a place of equal footing where the word creator directly translates to all that exists, we are served the very important function of satisfying the materialistic impulse. So a materialist describing the functioning and processes of the universe is still speaking about the creator, just with a different lens.
Science, we don't know all the answers. So we don't know where the laws of nature came from. We don't know why the universe began in the way that it did, if indeed it had a beginning. Is that in the past the universe was really ordered and it's getting more disordered. And that's that necessary state of order at the start of the universe, which is really the reason that we exist. That's the reason.
It's really difficult to deny that the universe exists regardless of how we choose to perceive it, and this serves as our first absolute in this conversation. The Creator, as defined by the law of one, is an all-encompassing everything, regardless of personal belief about how we think things really are. But hey, we're here for mystical bullshit, not a Neil deGrasse Tyson lecture, and this leads us to the longest quote of the series, creation as defined by the Hidden Hand AMA. And I mentioned it in the last video, but we'll just again briefly mention that despite the conspiratorial side of the dialogue, the Hidden Hand AMA remains one of the best concentrated sources of information concerning the law of one, as odd as that may be. With that being said, here it is. In the beginning, there is the infinite one. This is the source of all. Intelligent infinity. It is the undifferentiated absolute. Within it is unlimited potential, waiting to become. Think of it as the uncarved block of your Taoist traditions. Infinite intelligence, becoming aware of itself, seeks to experience itself, and the one infinite creator is born, or manifest. This appears to your third density comprehension as space. In effect, the Creator is a point of focused infinite consciousness, or awareness, into infinite intelligent energy. The one infinite Creator, also becoming self-aware, seeks to experience itself as Creator, and in so doing begins the next step down in the creational spiral. The one infinite Creator, in focusing its infinite intelligence, becomes intelligent energy, which you could call the Great Central Sun, and divides itself into smaller portions of itself that can then in turn experience themselves as creators, or central suns. In other words, each central sun or creator is a step down in conscious awareness or distortion from the original thought of creation. So, in the beginning was not the word, but thought. The word is thought expressed and made manifest as creator. There is unity. Unity is all there is. Infinite intelligence and infinite energy. The two are one, and within them is the potential for all creation. This state of consciousness could be termed as being. Infinite intelligence does not recognize its potential. It is the undifferentiated absolute. But infinite energy recognizes the potential of becoming all things in order to bring any desired experience into being. Intelligent infinity can be likened to the central heartbeat of life, and infinite energy as the spiritual lifeblood, or potential, which pumps out for the creator to form the creation. This image may assist your comprehension. Creation is based upon the three primary distortions of the infinite one. Number 1, free will. In the first law, or distortion of creation, the creator receives the free will to know and experience itself as an individuated, though paradoxically unified aspect of the one. Number 2, love. In the second law of creation, the initial distortion of free will becomes a focus point of awareness known as logos, or love, or the word in biblical terms. Love, or logos, using its infinite intelligent energy, then takes on the role of co-creating a vast array of physical illusions, thought forms, or densities, which some call dimensions, and which, according to its intelligent design, will best offer the range of potential experiences in which it can know itself. In effect, the one infinite creator, in dividing itself into logos, could be termed in your third density understanding as a universal creator. In other words, logos creates on a universal level of being, Logos creates physical universes in which it and the creator may experience their self. Let there be light. Number 3. Light. To manifest this infinite spiritual or life force energy into a physical thought form of densities, Logos creates the third distortion of light. From the 3 original primary distortions of the One into making the creation arise myriad hierarchies of other sub-distortions, containing their own specific paradoxes. The goal of the game is to enter into these in further divisions of creation, and then seek to harmonize the polarities in order to once again know oneself as the creator of them. The nature of all such physically manifest energy is light. Wherever thus exists any form of physical matter, there is light or divine intelligent energy at its core or center. Something which is infinite cannot be other than or many. An infinite creator knows only unity, thus drawing upon its infinite intelligence, the infinite creator designed a blueprint based on the finite principles of free will of awareness and sub-level creations, which in turn could become aware of themselves and seek to experience themselves as creators. And so, the Russian doll-style experiment was stepped down and down and down. Levels of creation within levels of creation. The one infinite creator, or great central sun, steps down its infinite energy to become Logos. Logos in turn designs vast universes of space as yet unmaterialized, stepping down and splitting itself again into logoi, plural, in other words, into an array of central suns which will each become a Logos or co-creator of its own universe, with each unique individualized portion of the one infinite creator containing within it as its very essence, intelligent infinity. Using the law of free will, each universal Logos central sun designs and creates its own version or perspective of physical reality in which to experience itself as creator. Stepping down again, it focuses its intelligent energy and creates the unmanifest form of galaxies within itself and splits itself into yet further co-creator portions, sub-Logos or suns, which in turn will then design and manifest their own ideas of physical reality in the form of points of conscious awareness that we call suns, stars, and planets. A planetary entity, or soul, begins the first density of experience into which another individualized portion of the One can incarnate. Just as with all Logos and sub-Logos of creation, each soul is yet another smaller, unique portion of the Infinite One. At first, the intelligent energy of the planet is in a state that you could call chaos, meaning that its energy is undefined. Then the process begins again. The planetary energy begins to become aware of itself, the first density of awareness is consciousness, and the planetary Logos, sub-Logos in effect, begins to create other downward steps within itself, and the internal makeup of the planet begins to form, as the raw elements of air and fire combine to work on the waters and earth, thus arising conscious awareness of their being, and the process of evolution begins, forming the second density. Second density beings begin to become aware of themselves as being separate, and thus begin to evolve toward the third density of self-conscious awareness, the lowest density into which a human soul can incarnate. Humans in turn, or the souls incarnated within them, seek to return to the light and love from which they came, as they begin the journey of progression, from third density up to the eighth density, and the return to the infinite oneness. If you ever feel like you don't understand the raw material / law of one, come back to this passage. Genesis does not have shit on this knowledge bomb. Notice how nothing mentioned contradicts our scientific understanding of the universe. It in fact enhances it. By first beginning with the perspective of infinite potential, we are met with a metaphysical analog to the Big Bang, describing how the undifferentiated absolute, intelligent infinity, becomes everything that there is. The stepping down of logos to sublogos to sub-sublogos, and so on, directly aligns with the scientific perspective of the Big Bang, expanding throughout space and time, intelligently ordering itself to form galactic superclusters, which are composed of galaxies, which are composed of solar systems, which sometimes are composed of us. Obviously, what differentiates the law of one perspective from the current scientific point of view is our understanding of consciousness. Something which, admittedly, science does not comprehend at all. But it's precisely this poorly understood conception of consciousness which we'll be exploring. Furthermore, this logoic nesting principle, as described by the Hidden Hand AMA and reinforced by its manifestation in physical reality, is overshadowed by its esoteric implications, the stepping down of source consciousness to the causal plane, then to the mental plane, before connecting to the astral plane, finally finding unification with the physical reality we know and love. Science is pretty confident in its understanding of physical reality, but the laws which govern these higher realms of consciousness, 4th, 5th, and 6th density light, have not been properly explored in any way which is relevant to our consciousness. It is possible through meditation to totally reduce the illusion that you now experience that creates the separation, an illusory separation, to what it actually is, a total illusion. This separation between you and the creator can be mechanically understood as an upward progression throughout the many densities of consciousness. The law of one claims that your realization of self as creator evolves from a third-dimensional perspective of fear to a fourth-dimensional perspective of love, then to a fifth-dimensional perspective of wisdom, balanced within the sixth-dimensional perspective of perfectly harmonized love-wisdom, all the way till a perfect eighth-dimensional realization of self as all that there is, the one infinite creator, becomes absolutely known and actualized by the self. Before moving further, here's a just as topical but not nearly as lengthy quote from the Hidden Hand AMA. Humanity needs to grow beyond the stagnating concept of gods. The idea of God takes the power out of your own hands and places it upon some shadowy unknown figure, somewhere out there. In other words, outside of yourself. Instead of God, see creator. We already are creators, and so are you. The only question is, will you create consciously or subconsciously? Knowing ourselves as creator relative to fundamental law is perhaps one of the most important things that the Law of One advocates. Living in harmony with fundamental law is how we spiritually progress back to living reunion with the creator, living reunion with all that there is. Not only can this be said to be the pure essence of any one particular faith, but it is also built up from a fundamentally rational perspective, something I feel differentiates the Law of One perspective from a lot of other New Age ideologies. Before working through the closing act of the intro, we are greeted with Carla threading together a few messages from 5th Density Group Soul Hatonn, relaying a TLDR of the overarching theme behind the UFO message. Being, please meditate, you live in a simulation. Except the TLDR is too long, and I feel much more effectively summarized by the Hidden Hand rambling. On this note, I am very graced that the aforementioned Hidden Hand rambling allows us to properly describe the Confederation of Planets and the service of the One Infinite Creator without a tinfoil hat on. Our ignorance of the Confederation of Planets, our ignorance of the inherent unity within the human group soul, and all of creation is a third-dimensional challenge, offered by the upward progression of densities inherent within the fundamental fabric of reality. On the train of me plagiarizing the Hidden Hand AMA, A planetary entity or soul begins the first density of experience in which another individualized portion of the One can incarnate. Just as with all logos and sub-logos of creation, each soul is yet another small, unique portion of the infinite One. The planetary energy begins to become aware of itself, the first density of awareness is consciousness, and the planetary logos, sub-logos, and effect begins to create downward steps within itself, and the internal makeup of the planet begins to form as the raw elements of air and fire combine to work on the waters and earth, thus arising conscious awareness of their being, and the process of evolution begins from the second density. Second density begins becoming aware of themselves as being separate, and thus begins to evolve toward the third density of self-conscious awareness, the lowest density in which a human soul can incarnate. Humans in turn, or the souls incarnated within them, seek to return to the light and love from which they came as they begin the journey to progression from third density up to the eighth density and the return to the infinite oneness. I was originally going to summarize all that, but I totally forgot that I can talk really fast. Right now, there's a majority of people who really believe that the supposed universal process of evolution has only ever happened on Earth. That there is no unified interdimensional civilization outside of our awareness. It might sound crazy to project something like the Galactic Confederation of Planets as truth, but in reality, projecting ourselves as alone in what's practically a near-infinite universe is a logical conundrum only satiated by the concepts and ideas clearly laid out in the raw material and associated work. So yes, the basic principle of a social memory complex or group soul is that each and every one named and introduced by the law of one channelings is a macrocosmic coalescence of a planetary entity's journey through the respective third-dimensional planetary cycle. We, of the Confederation of Planets in the service of the one infinite creator, have been, for many of your years, aware of many principles of reality. We are aware of these principles because we have availed ourselves to them just as the people of your planet may do. I'm not sure spiritualized aliens advocating for enlightenment before mass landing was a possibility anybody saw coming, but hey, gotta play the hand you're dealt. As mentioned in previous videos, the reason the Confederation does not help Earth in a more direct fashion is because of the first primary distortion of the one infinite creator, the fundamental law of free will. It's up to you, Neo, to break out of the Matrix. Time to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and start disciplining a daily meditation habit. As written in the Bible, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. Hatonn goes on to say, desire, my friends, is the key to what you receive. If you desire it, you shall receive it. This was the Creator's plan, a plan in which all of his parts would receive exactly what they desire. My friends, often in the illusion which you now experience, it seems that you do not acquire what you desire. In fact, the opposite seems to be the case in many, many instances. It is a paradox, it seems, that such a statement should be made, and that such apparent results of desire are manifested, and yet we state, without exception, that man receives exactly what he desires. Perhaps, my friends, you do not understand desire. Perhaps this understanding is not within the intellectual mind. Perhaps it will be necessary to spend time in meditation to become aware of your real desire. For, my friends, there is much, much more of you and of the creation than you presently appreciate with your intellectual abilities in your present illusion. I found it a little too ambitious to make such heavy clarifications to theology in many of its traditional conceptions, while also covering the remainder of the intro. As per usual, if things aren't quite clear yet, stay tuned, more will be revealed as the series continues and grows and develops. On that note, if you imagined a plan separate or outside of yourself when you heard Hatonn speak of the Creator's plan, then listen up. God, or the Creator, or even maybe perhaps the pure light of rationality shining away the illusory thought forms associated with these concepts, and finally settling on the words intelligent infinity, which we relate to as a state of being to become conscious of, is fundamentally known and actualized by intending to resonate with the entire universe. One infinite creator. In practice, this can be understood as a state of gnosis, achieved through meditation and applied knowledge of the law of one. Individuation, finding wholeness within yourself, disciplined spiritual practice, becoming conscious, awakening, knowing the law of one, and much, much more. Maybe all of these different definitions of enlightenment exist only to describe the same thing. Perhaps that's the true distinction between monotheism and polytheism. Notice how these more agnostic or universal definitions only serve to tiptoe around incredibly distorted Judeo-Christian thought forms. I wanted to work with this idea more and expand on it, but it'll have to wait till later. It is very difficult for the peoples of this planet to give up their illusion, to give up the preconceived knowledge of what they believe to be cause and effect. However, this is not reality. This is illusion born of illusion. It is a simple product of the complexity that man upon this planet has generated. Join with us in divorcing your thinking from such complexities and become aware of what has created you, everything that you experience, and everything that is thought. Become aware of your creator. Become aware of his desire. And when you know this desire, you will know your own. For you and your creator are one. And you are one with all of his parts, and therefore all of your fellow beings throughout all of creation. When you know his desire, you will feel it. There will be no more confusion. There will be no more questions. You will have found what you have sought. You will have found love, for this is the desire of your creator, that all of his parts express and experience the love that created you. This may be found simply in meditation. No amount of seeking within the intellectual concepts of your people, no amount of careful planning or careful interpretation of the written or spoken word will lead you to the simple truth. Okay, well, fun conception of enlightenment to play with here. Not only is realization of self as creator fundamental to the law of one, but it's also analog to any effective path of spiritual realization. Taking responsibility for your actions, deeds, words, and even thoughts, vowing to grow instead of stagnate, choosing to focus on what is within your locus of control, actualizing the self via communion with the Creator, communion with a desire that is true to your heart and moves you forward throughout the eternal present is a much more satisfactory definition of enlightenment than something that only belongs to monks who live off in a foreign country. Just keep meditating. Hatonn continues by building off of the fundamental law of free will. We do not wish to impose our understanding of truth upon your peoples, and this would be something that we would do if we contacted them directly. We could not help it, for our very utterance of truth would be accepted by many of your peoples as being valid. We do not wish to be thought of as the ultimate representatives of the Creator's truth. We wish to give this to your peoples in such a way so that they may accept or reject this at their own will. This, as we understand it, is a necessary provision in the spiritual evolvement of all mankind, that he be, at some state of his evolution, in a position to accept or reject what is necessary for his evolution. The Confederation seems incredibly intent on allowing the truth to be something personally discoverable to man, stating that the quest for the truth within third-dimensional reality is the fundamental ingredient of spiritual evolution. This truth, as expressed by Hatonn, who I am once again going to quote, must be realized from within. It cannot be impressed from without. We are attempting to stimulate those of your peoples who would be stimulated to seeking this truth that is within them. And since this is a quotes episode, I guess, here's one from the Kalama Sutta, written by none other than Mr. Gautama Buddha himself. Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything simply because it is spoken and rumored by many. Do not believe in anything simply because it is found written in your religious books. Do not believe in anything merely on the authority of your teachers and elders. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it. Let's be clear. I'm not asking you to believe anything. All I ask is that you become aware of the choice to know and become conscious. Okay, I know I just said this is a quotes episode, but it might be time to start summarizing these so this episode doesn't become an audiobook. There is so much information to cover within these 15 Hatonn quotes in the intro, and covering that much ground is going to be exhaustive. If you're enjoying this series thus far, I encourage you to read through the intro and digest the string of Hatonn's messages for yourself. I'm sure that if people are truly interested in the material, reading through either the website or books is a worthwhile way to spend your time. Anyways, the basic message being construed here is one of universal enlightenment. The idea that the weight of the third density illusion is something that we voluntarily chose to take on for the sake of our spiritual evolution. Geocentric notions aside, each entity within the Confederation assures us that they too have worked through a third-dimensional cycle, seeking to assist Earth despite the limitations of the galactic quarantine. We only suggest that which we have to offer may be of value, for we have found, in our experience, as we have passed through the same experiences as those of Earth, that there is a most beneficial distortion in seeking to serve. In other words, aliens, perhaps not as we traditionally conceptualize them, have been through this before, and maybe it's time to listen up. Hatonn speaks again and again on the need to meditate in order to properly unveil the illusory nature of third density. We will continue to act as we do now, speaking through instruments such as this one, until a sufficient number of the peoples of your planet have become aware of truth. We are constantly striving to bring, through many channels of communication, the simple message to the peoples of Earth. The simple message that will leave them with a simple understanding of all that there is, and that is love. I think there was a fellow named Jesus or something who tried getting this message across, and didn't work out so well for him. Galactic quarantine aside, I guess I can't blame anyone for staying up in space or wherever these supposed enlightened aliens are. That which you know, you are to be careful of, for what you know in the real creation has power, and that which you desire is all of the direction which that power will be aimed at. But have faith, my friends, in what you know and what you are learning. Feed your faith and your understanding through meditation. The further that you go along this path, my friends, the more meaningful you will find this simple statement. Meditate. It begins as a simple process, and little by little it becomes a way in which you live. Observe it as you progress along your own spiritual path. Whenever any unique spiritual philosophy starts talking about universal love, meditation, or anything that's actually effective instead of worshiping the one true God, that's normally a good sign. We'll talk about veiled existence and higher planes of consciousness as this series goes on, but in terms of practical application, at least for beginners, it's a good idea to ground down, discipline a daily meditation habit, resonate in good consciousness, and actualize the love of the Creator as it is known to the self. Keep meditating and you'll figure out what that actually means instead of getting pinged with the characteristic Judeo-Christian guilt. Being a consistent meditator programs the mind and body to put aside sensory distractions, quiet down, and create a sense of single-pointed focus. Sex scandals aside, the first 3 steps in the book, The Mind Illuminated, are a great way to get started. If you're serious about picking a meditation habit up, I highly recommend screenshotting the image on screen, internalizing the message, and putting it into practice. Hatonn recommends a somewhat formal type of meditation at first, then allowing it to blossom into a semi-meditative state at all times. Meditate upon the complete unity of yourself and all that you see. Do this not once, and not simply in present circumstances, but at all times, and especially in difficult circumstances. For insofar as you love and feel at one with those things which are difficult for you, to that extent will those circumstances be alleviated. This is not due to any laws within our physical illusion, but is due to the law of love. For that body which is of spirit, which is interpenetrated with the physical body, is higher than your physical body, and those changes which you make by love upon your spiritual body will, of necessity, reflect themselves within the physical illusion. There is a really big idea here with the stepping down embedded within the concept of the Legoic nesting principle, and how it ties in here with the law of attraction. But hey, if it's not immediately obvious, please keep supporting this series, and all will reveal itself in due time. Please keep in mind that it is really hard to get off the floor as a fledgling content creator, and any support really means the world to me. Likes, comments, and subscriptions, and viewer retention too, I guess, are all ways in which you can help support the growth of the channel. But yes, Working from a higher place of consciousness on our more esoteric bodies is a much more efficient way for the creator, which you are one with, stop conceptualizing the creator as a god outside of yourself, to manifest its desires. So if you desperately want a girlfriend or boyfriend, I hope you've been paying close attention. Okay, cool. Now let's start talking about the apocalypse. It might have been hard to believe news about the world ending in the 80s, but in 2022 it's much easier to accept. From the Mayan calendar to the Book of Revelations, to the very apparent state of the world and the rest of this Wikipedia page, the world ending feels less like a what if and more like a when if. The Law of One perspective states that the universe follows a procession of cycles as precise as clockwork, and although no specific date or event can be given in relation to what future is in store for us, there are some universalities we can acknowledge and take with us. For starters, with the idea that a third-dimensional cycle isn't necessarily some horrible cosmological mistake, and instead serves the intended purpose of either being a window for third-density souls to evolve spiritually and transcend samsara, or for transcended souls to step back down and work off karma, we open our minds to a more universal perspective, and see the graduation of third-dimensional light, fear, polarizing towards fourth-dimensional light, love. Meaning the potential experiences offered in a third-density environment will soon no longer be available as we continue shifting to a higher vibing fourth-density environment. This is hinted as being a gradual process, with notions of a 2012-styled apocalypse quickly falling out of favor. However, this graduation is not for everybody. This graduation is earned by consciously choosing and actualizing the path of love and light. The Confederation wishes to make this choice, along with what it entails, known to the people of Earth so that a more conscious decision can be made. As to how graduation is not for everybody, there's a suggestion here about many different timelines, but that's a rabbit hole for another episode. In the meantime, love freely and respect free will, unless that free will doesn't respect you. Carla continues. This concept of the Judgment Day differs from the extological one in that the one who judges us is not a god apart from us, but the god within us. As a result of this harvest, some will go on to a new age of love and light, and will learn new lessons in a very positive and beautiful density, as the Confederation calls it. This new density is no different than transcending samsara, finding the kingdom of heaven within yourself, etc. The point being that the Law of One speaks of looking for universal resonance between the many different spiritual traditions. The idea of an afterlife is nothing new, but if there is truth to it, it's wise to look at the objective evidence for its reality so that our faith can make an informed decision. Now to try to explain how this is a miraculous event and not something to be scared of. Hatonn finishes with, there's going to be a harvest, as you might call it, a harvest of souls that will shortly occur upon your planet. We are attempting to extract the greatest possible harvest from this planet. This is our mission, for we are the harvesters. Well, what an interesting choice of vocabulary. I guess I get where the Vice article was coming from now. Truth is, the third dimension might as well be a prison. It's very dense and uncomfortable, as we're all familiar, but it's a necessary stepping stone on the journey to knowing yourself as creator. If you've been paying attention thus far, it's essential to unconsciously fall into the belief that you're separated from the love and light made up of all that there is in order to step back up to heaven as an individual in good consciousness. You may have grown attached to the 3D world as you know it, and once ascended always have the option to step back down for whatever reason. But truth is, the universe wants better things for you. Beings of ascended consciousness are doing everything that's possible to communicate to Earthmen that more pleasurable realms of existence await them, as long as they continue to seek the love and light within them, despite whatever cruel circumstances of material illusion come to pass. Spiritually speaking, Creator School is not a bad way to define Earth. It's been a long day, history class sucked, and Mom's finally here to pick you up. We've moved through Carla, working through some of what Hatonn had to say in the intro here now, and we're going to skip this bit about past life experiences. I feel like if we talk about reincarnation on this channel, I'm going to do it in a way that exemplifies more satisfying evidence of the subject. Another bullet point in my great list of things to get around to for this series. Anyways, all this talk about our unified consciousness with the Creator surely relates to some kind of special divine power, right? I have my own take on the subject, which I'll be getting to after covering the remainder of the intro here. Anyways, remember to suspend disbelief and all that, but the Law of One does imply that Jesus' healing of the sick, Moses' parting of the Red Sea, Enoch's ayahuasca shamans curing incurable diseases not only holds weight, but does so in accordance to a system of laws behind it, allowing us to peek behind the curtain, seeing how these miraculous types of events could not only ever actually occur, but create a system of thought in which these miracles can be replicated. Speaking of which, Carla accounts her travels with Don down in Mexico and the Philippines. The couple were searching for manifestations of the psychic surgery phenomena, and, luckily, Carla had a host of health problems which a psychic surgeon was able to not only identify, but also heal. There's an underlying thread of logic held throughout the raw material that suggests that recording hard evidence of any supernatural feat is near impossible, suggesting that the pre-incarnative catalyst intended to break into the simulation meme from the last episode holds weight not only in the case of Uri Geller bending spoons of his mind, but also cryptid sightings, UFO abductions, psychedelic experiences, tales of immortality, psychic surgery, or any other miraculous feat that implies a supernatural layer to reality that our collective awareness is currently unconscious of. Anyways, yeah, the duo had no interest in recording physical manifestations of supernatural phenomena, as that doesn't really get to the heart of the matter and will always be explained away by rationalists somehow. With that being said, normally I trim these things up a bit, but I think it's cool enough to leave the whole thing in, so here's Carla's account of the matter. This is an example of what the psychic surgeon creates as a manifestation for the eye. It is a Philippine bedroom. The patient is undressed, retaining those garments which may be needed for personal modesty, and lies down on the bed, which may in some cases be covered with a simple shower curtain, usually that one borrowed from the motel bathroom. The healer, a religious man, and one who has often spent 10 or 12 years of his life praying to become a healer, walking in the wilderness of the volcanic mountains of Luzon in solitude, enters the room. He carries nothing except perhaps a Bible. Often, the healer is accompanied by an assistant who functions as interpreter, and, to use a term familiar to our culture, surgical assistant. To use a more accurate term, cleanup man. The healer normally knows very little English. He or she begins by taking the hands and moving them over the body, palms down. We are informed that this is a method of scanning the body just as an X-ray machine would. A site for surgery is then selected, and if the healer is right-handed, the left hand is pressed firmly against the skin. The skin seems to separate, and the interior of the body is seen. This manifestation is very real-looking, and anyone who has seen a genuine psychic surgeon at work and has not studied the phenomena carefully will swear that the body has been opened with the bare hands. The right hand then enters this open site and manipulates within the body. In the most interesting case in which I took part, the healer was told that I had arthritis. He scanned my body with the help of his assistant, then he opened the abdominal cavity and with a very liquid-sounding action, pulled gently, but firmly, at what seemed to be organs rather than joints. It was not unpleasant, but to me, the patient, it was puzzling, as I had no arthritis in my organs. He then removed what seemed to be 3 rather small, long pieces of bloody material, at the center of which was a small piece of hard material. This done, he removed his left hand. The incision vanished without a scar or trace of any kind. The two men, in this case, mopped up what had become a fairly considerable amount of blood, rinsed their hands, and then took baby oil and worked it over the abdominal skin, massaging in silence. When I asked what the healer was doing working in the abdominal area, the interpreter relayed my request and relayed back the information that the scanning had produced the knowledge of 3 cysts upon my right ovary, and the misplacement or dropping of both ovaries which had occurred through years of very active life. The pulling had been to reposition the ovaries so that I would not be in discomfort during menstruation. The removal of the cysts had the same purpose. Although my gynecologist had diagnosed these 3 small cysts when I was a very young woman, I had never spoken of them to Don Elkins, and indeed to no one, since such conversation is not fascinating. One other person knew of these cysts, my mother, but she was 12,000 miles away. Upon returning to the United States, I had my gynecologist examine the area, and he confirmed that the 3 cysts were no longer palpable. They have remained gone, and the comfort level of my menstrual cycle is correspondingly far better. And then everyone stood up in the room and clapped, gave Carla $100, and yeah. Again, the authors stress the importance of critical thinking, and continuously suggest to use your own discernment, as they did, to find the truth of the matter when it comes to supernatural phenomena. Surprisingly, there's a good thread of rationality to follow with the above in mind. As this series continues, we'll explore the denser reality of clairvoyance and Amazonian plant medicine, which will allow us to discuss the mechanics behind how something like the aforementioned anecdote could ever feasibly occur. And wow, we're practically finished covering everything in the intro. The first session of the Raw Contact throws a lot at you, so hopefully this video has helped prepare you to digest some of the incredulous concepts we'll be working with in future episodes. Aliens and a unified galactic order sound absolutely insane until you stop to consider the Fermi paradox, UFOs, samsara, the reality of our quote-unquote advanced society having hardly developed good consciousness, psychedelics implying the existence of intelligent interdimensional entities existing in realms just outside of our awareness, the truth about theology, and even things like the fact that terms like star seeds are common vocabulary for TikTok teenagers. Even though I doubt many have put serious thought into the fact that the term implies the existence of an extraterrestrial soul incarnating into a human body. Closing out the final act of the intro, we're given an intro to Jim, his history, and the role he played in the Raw Contact. Learning a technique of consciousness expansion called brain self-control from a gruff old mountain man who lived in a log cabin elevated at 10,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, Jim learnt of the possibility of contacting extraterrestrials through meditative tuning, as opposed to schizophrenic tales of UFO abduction. Among other things, Jim was well studied in occult literature stretching back to his college years, and was more than qualified to assist the now trio's practice in the art of channeling. Practically leaving his old life behind to assist Don and Carla in their channeling endeavors, Jim moved to Louisville, and 3 weeks later, the first manifestation of the Raw Contact materialized. There's an interesting mystery here about Carla's telepathic reception in the trance state, or tuned trance telepathy, which implies that absolutely no one has any knowledge of how to channel the 6-dimensional social memory complex Ra, or how non-local intelligence that accurate was able to be sourced from one person, as compared to most of the other channeling of our era, which tend to be generally considered as a much more distorted message. Finally finishing the introduction to the material, we're left with a final snippet from Jim, which I'll quote. "We are beginners when it comes to knowing how the Raw Contact occurs, and it has only been through a process of trial and error, session by session, that we have learned more about how to support our instrument, Carla, and the mental, physical, and spiritual senses. We were so excited about the Raw Contact when it first began that we had 2 sessions per day for days at a time, but we have since learned that this procedure was much too wearing on Carla. We average about 1 session every week to 10 days now, which allows us to prepare for each session with the greater degree of care that seems to be required as sessions accumulate. A great deal of thought goes into the questions which Don asks during each session. Each of us contribute ideas, but the great bulk of the line of questioning is accomplished by Don, since he has the years of experience in investigating the UFO contactee phenomena necessary to develop the intellectual foundation required in any attempt to fit the diverse pieces of this puzzle together. He also has the intuitive sense that is vital in following the unexpected and profoundly revealing answers that Ra so often gives with further questions, developed on the spur of the moment to take advantage of the new insights. With the decision made to hold a session the night before the session is to occur, we arise the morning of the session, have a light breakfast, and begin the series of steps which will best aid us in successfully completing the session. I give Carla a half-hour back massage to loosen her muscles and joints before each session because she will have to remain absolutely motionless for between an hour and 45 minutes. Then we meditate so that the harmony we try to produce in our daily lives is intensified, and so that our desires are unified into the single desire to seek contact with Ra. We then perform our ritual of protection and cleansing of the room in which the contact will be made, and situate Carla in a prone position on the bed, covering her body with a white blanket, her eyes below with a white cloth, and hook up the 3 tape recorder microphones just below her chin so that we don't miss any of the session if 1 or 2 tape recorders malfunction. By this time, all that is visible of Carla is her hair flowing down both of her shoulders and her nose poking out of the sea of cloth white surrounding it. As she mentally recites the prayer of St. Francis, Dawn is aligning the table which holds the Bible, candle, incense, and chalice of water in a straight line with her head, as recommended by Ra. After Dawn lights the candle and incense, he and I walk the circle of 1 around Carla and repeat the words which begin each contact. At some point after that, Carla departs her physical body, and Ra then uses it to make the words which form the responses to Dawn's questions. I meditate and send light to Carla for the duration of the session, only taking time out to flip the tapes over as they finish each side. When the session is over, Dawn waits a few moments for Carla to return to her usually quite stiff body, calls her name a few times until she responds, helps her to sit up, rubs her neck a bit, and gives her the chalice full of water to drink after he and I have filled it as full of our love vibrations as we can. So there we have it, a breakdown to the intro of the raw material. However, don't leave quite yet. There's one more thing I wanted to address with this video, and I couldn't really figure out the best way to tackle this bit of writing I had regarding redefining modern theological conceptions of God, which was also the intention behind the creation of this video. So here's me tacking on this bit of writing I have, which loosely attempts to draw some unitive patterns between a wide variety of religions and spiritualities. Throughout many different spiritual practices and systems of magic, ranging from Hermeticism to shamanism, I've noticed the pattern of 4 distinct energies cropping up cross-culturally. Although they generally manifest differently depending on the localized spiritual practice of any given region, which in and of itself is a manifestation of an archetype cloaking itself in a near-infinite array of intricately woven astral matter, I've long searched for a universality between these 4 elements. Whether it's the fire, air, water, earth, the 4 directions, or the unpronounceable name of God in Kabbalah, I think I've finally found an answer that finds its roots in the literal blueprint of life itself: DNA. DNA is composed of 4 elements: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. Bound together by a single helix, a near-infinite configuration of these 4 components spirals from the beginning of life on Earth 4.5 billion years ago, all the way to where we are now. There's a bit more here about the idea that these energies are unconsciously, or maybe after this video, consciously, spiraling towards the heavenly reality of time-space, the eternal present, as opposed to our known reality of linear time, or space-time. Our conversations about veiled existence and galactic quarantine are very important to keep in mind here. The time-space and space-time differential perhaps laying out a more modern understanding of what it means for our consciousness to be caught betwixt heaven and earth. Exploring this in more depth is beyond the scope of this video, and I just wanted to throw the idea on the table before moving forward with the series, but perhaps you could call that infinite spiraling the Akasha principle, which is technically 5 elements. Anyways, I said that in this video I would redefine modern theology, and I meant it. Dispelling antiquated notions of God, I close off my covering of the intro with a final revelation. As a side note, before getting into this, it should be stated that all faculties of the Creator are charged by the purity of your intentions. We begin with absolute benevolence and the two paths, service to others or service to self, how we embody the earth element, how we begin our journey back to the light from which we came. Omnipresence, being everywhere at once, resonating with the entire universe, embodying the water element. Application looks like lucid dreaming, astral travel, and access to the Akashic records. Omniscience, knowing everything at once, embodying the air element, complete access to the mental body. Channeling and intuition, it's how this material was able to be generated in the first place. Omnipotence, everything is within your power, how we embody the element of fire. Law of attraction and manifestation have become much more popular as of late. Omnipotence is known to us through our ability to manifest situations, ideals, and states of beings within our lives. These are all faculties of the One Infinite Spirit. Through effective spiritual practice, we unify our awareness with the One Spiritual Body, the One Infinite Creator, or God, and thus, God has stepped down to earth in unconsciousness, and man steps back up to heaven as God in good consciousness. So yeah, I think the one absolutely benevolent, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent universe that we are all co-creating, whether we're conscious of that or not, is a solid projection of what I believe resonates with the word One Infinite Creator. Needless to say, I am not a geocentrist, and believe that the Fermi paradox finds its resolution in the notion of galactic quarantine. My big contribution to occultism is to suggest that veiled existence, as it is traditionally known, reveals itself partially as galactic quarantine to the earnest seeker. So here we have it. I'm gonna close the video off on what I originally set out to do, so here is Azlef's definition of God / the One Infinite Creator. God is a dirty word for spirit, and spirit is a word unconscious of itself as creator. The Law of One perspective understands God less as a personality outside of ourselves, and more as a feeling, knowing of unitive consciousness. It's the same thread of consciousness that reminds us that we all come from the same source, and are thus equal in both worth and potential for growth. This inevitably manifests as beginning to know the divine magical personality within yourself, as beginning to live in communion with the Creator within. And to top that off, I'll add that theology is better realized as not understanding, but knowing the Law of One. So I'm going to cover my ass and make things even more clear. Here are some words realizing themselves as Creator. Agnostically speaking, all that exists. Pragmatically speaking, the relationship between yourself, the individual, and all that exists. Geographically speaking, the singularity / great central sun at the center of the universe. Mystically speaking, you yourself as an individual, learning how to best explore consciousness and then finding meaningful application of that knowledge. Christ consciously speaking, effectively meeting the present moment with unitive love. Now with that out of the way, to properly know God, the One Infinite Creator, is to properly know one original thought. To feel, know, and commune with every intelligent exploration of infinity. Each perspective is another eye on our do-it-yourself biblical angel. Add it up, and hey, what do you know? We're experiencing mystical union with intelligent infinity through the Creator's infinite intelligence. Now, if only we could agree on the fact that consciousness is the only reality. Maybe we'd all be on the same page that the Law of One teaching us how to properly explore consciousness is a bigger deal than Elon Musk trying to send rockets to Mars. I've spent a lot of time hermiting and intensely seeking these ideas, so again, I thank you for making it to the end of the video. I give to you knowledge of your divinity as is applicable in a third-dimensional sphere as a reward. I would imagine it was me looking for satisfying answers to this topic which ended up making this video take so long to finally release. Channeling in this sense is still a new skill set to me, so I hope the wait was worth it. Thank you so much for all of your support, it's very meaningful and helps keep content like this flowing. See ya! All right, and we're going to tack one more thing on before the video closes, kind of adding this after everything's edited and almost ready to be uploaded. I also have a gaming channel, so if you're unaware of that and you're interested in Pokemon TCG content, kind of working on some Minecraft stuff as well. I love that game, and we'll see where, you know, the road takes us in the future as well, right? There's nothing too set in stone except the TCG series, like I said. But yeah, feel free to check that out. Again, thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I'll catch you later. See ya.